Let's see. How are we doing out there? Hope everyone's doing okay. Had a decent day wherever you are. Um, I know there's so many things going on in the world. I know myself personally, although all these things are going on, my video being taken down kind of has me a little bit thrown off. It's always a little bit aggravating. And especially the way that YouTube likes to do it. I guess while I'm already talking about it, I guess I'll just go into that. This is what I've been thinking with Marcus Cage. Of course, I am Marcus Cage. Uh, so my stories today are the Frito Lay Strike. Um, and this is something that I'm a little surprised that I wasn't already abreast of it, being from the same state. But a lot of times you can't really keep up with every single story that's going on. So, late to it, but for those who are not familiar with it, I will try my best to explain what led to the strike. Um, Also, let's see, what led to the strike, what happened for the strike to end, what kind of deal did they actually make? Um, and just overall some of the conditions which I've heard that went on in that Frito Lay plant in Kansas. Um, of course, like we talked about before, the censorship, and then also Daniel Hale, he gets 45 months in prison. And for those who do not know who he is, he was I believe he was enlisted, Air Force enlisted drone pilot, and apparently through his functions, whatever, while at work, he came across some footage, and in that footage, it showed what would look like some very incriminating war crimes, in my opinion. Um, One of the stats which came out in a lot of his information, which he leaked, one of the biggest and most important stats I feel is the percentage of what's called collateral damage. For those who do not know what collateral damage is when you accidentally kill people. So if you're finding out that the fatality rate of a lot of these drone incidents, 90% of the people who are being involved or who are being killed are innocent. And that goes back to that one situation with Obama when he had that 16-year-old American that was killed in the drone strike because his father was allegedly a terrorist. So, and at that time, Obama showed no kind of real concern or mercy that he had killed a 16-year-old boy, 16-year-old American. Also, didn't even get a great deal of press considering what had happened. And his response, more or less, from what I remember, was, "You know what? Hey, it's kind of tough luck. His father was a terrorist." Like, so cold, so heartless. But back to Daniel, all he did was simply tell the truth, and that's when you know you're actually a part of a tyrannical government. Um, if the things you're doing have to be hidden, then that should be an indication and red flags of what's completely wrong with that whole situation. Um, I understand if it's a battle situation, um, where literal lives are on the line for your troops. But when you're talking about drone assassinations, because make no mistake, this isn't like, the troops are pinned down and they need to, they need some kind of reinforcements and the drones are giving them cover support. That's not what's going on here. We're talking about drone assassinations, where this is aggressive. This is not defensive. This is not, you know, we're giving reinforcements. That's not what's going on here. This is something where this is targeted, supposed to be precision attack on a whoever whoever the United States deem them as an enemy or for whatever reasons. Um, More and more these days, I tend to be a little bit more skeptical of the United States motivations and even some of the people which they told us that are so horrible. Um, if you look at the United States record and how they've dealt in the past, I mean, literally go back to their relations. Let me know if the planes and trains and automobiles get a little bit too noisy or loud. I can close that door. Um, got a little cricket out there. It sounds like too, but anyway, you think about the Native Americans. Over 400 contracts, which America literally broke. And so, if you have a nation which has a well documented record of being distrustful, who tells you everybody else is bad and we're the shining light on the hill and always trust America. And America is always correct. Always keep that in mind. America has not done anything wrong. Okay, we had a couple mistakes, right? A couple mistakes. But America is not wrong. And so this young man gets to spend a couple of years in prison. I believe that totals to around 4 years, I think. 45 months. Those out there who are mathematicians, you guys can double check me and correct my figures. Uh, I have no problem with being corrected, especially when it comes to math. Math is definitely not my number one or strong suit, so please forgive me if I am off by a little bit. Um, it was just the article that I read. It actually worded it as the month, so that's the reason why I worded it 45 months. So this young man is pretty much because how this judicial system works these days is once you get in it, you're kind of ruined unless somehow he becomes some kind of a Twitter or Instagram celebrity and somehow people want him to speak or give him money in some kind of way, which that sometimes does happen. But for a lot of people who fall into that category of being a whistleblower, your life becomes pretty miserable after because the government literally has flagged you and you'll literally have a criminal record now. I mean, it's already hard to find a job with a criminal record. Imagine how hard it is to find a job with a criminal record for, whatever, I can't remember exactly, what was it, Espionage Act, which they dug out of World War One. I mean, actually, I believe it actually goes back further than World War One, but for for sake of argument, we'll just say at least from back to World War One, it's like one of the last times it was actually used. I believe it was threatened a couple of times in the 70s and 80s, but this was the first time where it was like used in close to 100 years. So to me, it almost comes more across as the United States has egg on its face. And it's the same thing with Julian Assange. I feel like the United States truly believes that their image is so important and valuable that they have to restore it, which I don't think they've gotten the memo that we see who you are. Most of us know the United States history, and I'm not even just talking about how they got the land or how they brought slaves over or how they enslaved some of the people who were here and how damn near everybody who came here was oppressed in some kind of way through the people at the top in this system who, even as certain groups will start to get certain privileges, they would leverage that against them so that they could push down another class of people. And that's just what this country has been built on division. It's been built on maximizing on people's lack of information or lack of access to information is what I prefer is because say you have parents where they're well studied. They know a lot about finance, business, things like that. The lessons which you get from your parents who have knowledge in those different areas gets passed down to you, and you don't even look at that as an extra benefit or I would say what like an extra commodity, which you're receiving that helps you start out in like on a better footing because you're going to make more than likely better financial decisions. As in somebody who, well, they grew up with a parent who was very irresponsible with money, or maybe the parent wasn't that they were irresponsible. They didn't have a good educational system. They didn't have access to jobs which paid very well. And so maybe they spent a lot of time working and didn't have a lot of time to pass down a lot of information to their kids. You know, all of those different things, I feel are important. Uh, Excuse me, getting a bit parched. But anyway, back on topic with Daniel Hill. This is no different than what Edward Snowden went through, Chelsea Manning, Daniel Ellsberg. I feel like I just talked about, you know, all of these different people and the same kind of thing. And I guess while I'm on that topic and, I have the time to expand a little bit, I mean, you go back and it doesn't even really matter how far you want to go back. If you just keep going back and back and back, you realize anybody who wanted to stand up against the system, or not even that they started out with their intention to stand up against the system, um, if you do in any kind of way, even if it's just for your own personal self preservation, you're looked at as if you're not even entitled to that. And so when you're dealing with such an oppressive, I guess, rulership or, settler colonialism, when you're dealing with somebody who they can only see when they're aggrieved and they're harmed and can't see that they're literally like stepping on your head. When you're dealing with people like that, it is going to make things always tougher. So dealing with this type of oppression from these type of people where they don't want to hear you even speak. Um, I guess I'll bring it up again. The movie I was watching about Billie Holiday and the song which she's mostly famous for, "Strange Fruit." For those who are not familiar with Strange Fruit is a song that is talking about a lot of the horrible tragedies which happened with the KKK and mainly the Black community, but I won't say that it did not um, reach out to the gay community, um, no matter which race. That it didn't reach out to, maybe Jewish community, maybe um, I guess Asian communities, whoever was coming into the country who was different than a lot of those Southerners, and there's even reports where they just killed people who were from the North if they start arguing with them. So when you're dealing with somebody who already has a mentality of hatred towards you, and the system still keeps those people in charge. Now, I'm not saying every single one of them, but I'm saying that mentality stays there where you feel entitled to always tell these people how it's going to go. And when you've had that kind of power sitting at the top for so long, you get more and more rigid and less likely to want to hear any opposition. And so that's where a lot of this censorship comes into play. Um, these cases of these whistleblowers, This is just censorship on a much larger level where the consequences are, the consequences are brutal. Um, I'm pretty sure that they hope that the judge was going to do more and give him much longer sentence, but you know, it could have been worse. I don't want to try to say, hey, that's, I don't want to say anything, either way as to his sentence and how it could impact him or not impact him. I don't want to go into any of that, but I just know that in my gut, the prosecutors, well, literally, you could tell on the paperwork that they were trying for much more. And so, whether it was to make him an example or that is going to be the new modus operandi, I don't know for a fact. But it seems like going after anybody who wants to have even the slightest bit of information which goes off of the main narrative, especially when it's something which embarrasses, the State Department and the Pentagon and the military as a whole. It puts egg on their face. It's no different. You look back through history, nation through nation through nation. There was always somebody who starts speaking up against the government. Either they were assassinated, they were ran out of town, um, they literally were exiled from their homelands. This is nothing new. It's just with the technology of today, the ability of these people at the top for them to have more control. And we already know about like the Pegasus software and all that. And that goes into more of what Edward Snowden was trying to release about how that they are listening in on us on all the time. I mean, at this point, I realize I have no power to stop these people at all from whatever they decide to do if they were going to do something to me. Just like with the censorship of yanking my video down. It says, well, you went against YouTube medical guidelines. Well, could you please explain to me specifically which one it is? But no, they're not going to do that. I mean, and if you guys are so certain what I'm saying is so entirely wrong, why come you don't? I mean, you're a multi-billion-dollar company. You can't send one of even your low-level people who are part of your medical advice PR people to come and sit and explain it to somebody like me what I said wrong. Or in fact, do it on my show live. Embarrass me, please. But when you just yank people's stuff down and you give them an extremely vague answer, which I'm pretty sure that it's vague on purpose, regardless of what you'll probably say. But I think it's more or less so you figure people aren't going to really continue to make a big deal about it because there's not much they can do. It's just you guys are kind of doing it to kind of cover your own butts to say that you did say something once you yanked it down. But just like last year, with a lot of people start coming out with asking the question, and it's not like they were making the claim. Not all of it. I mean, some people were, but there were many people just asking the question about what about the possible lab leak scenario. People got demonetized, channels yanked down, they were thrown onto different algorithms, all kind of stuff, videos, buried. And then flip forward some time up to now, what happens? They found out, oh, well, that is a possibility. But is there any kind of recompense back to any of those people that they screwed over? They still probably run commercials on a lot of those people's channel who they are allowing to be on there, who they demonetize and probably haven't remonetized. But yet they're so quick to run and yank down somebody's video when literally the CDC themselves has been back and forth and back and forth and contradicting their own information. And so, which part of their information am I supposed to go from as authoritative when they're against themselves? See, YouTube doesn't want to answer those kind of questions, but we're supposed to know exactly the narrative that we're supposed to follow from YouTube. And I mean, not from, yeah, we're supposed to be able to figure out whatever these health guidelines that are set out, and we're supposed to know exactly what the CDC says that's truthful and not truthful, or which part is accurate now, or it's not, or it's going to be accurate soon, or there's if the same place which you're using as your measuring stick is not even clear and your standards are not clear, how could you make any determinations? And what are you even making these determinations on? I mean, are you guys, I guess, candid enough and decent enough to just actually explain your motives or why? Yeah, Leslie, what I know what not to believe. I know that when, let's see, my three channels combined, and granted, some of my subscribers are crossover subscribers, but let's say the number is roughly around 320. Let's say between 325, 350. And let's say, some of that's crossover. So let's say roughly about 200. Okay, about 200 subscribers. What the hell does anything I say going to do to make any difference to really anybody? Everybody still has to make their own decisions as adults. For one, all I do is give opinions on about what I'm doing and what I'm not doing, and what I believe and what I don't believe. Now, the CDC can say whatever the hell they want to, but everything, and they'll even admit to it that they're not certain on every single thing which they're talking about. So how in the hell can you treat it like it is the holy grail, like it's the holy Bible, that it is infallible, when they keep changing their narratives and messages all of the time? Fauci literally gets on TV, gets caught in multiple lies, but yet you'll let MSNBC keep videos up, which are literally contradictory videos. Because you go back further enough, they still have some of those videos up from last year where they were saying that there's no possible way that it could have came from a lab leak, and literally saying that, oh, it had to come from these markets because it's not racist at all. Let's just assume, yeah, definitely the Asian people over there have to all be eaten from wet markets. Yeah, that's not racist at all to assume that it's normal that Chinese citizens, that they just typically eat dog and and what was it, scorpions and snake and all kind of just random whatever roadkill they can find. That's not offensive or racist at all, right? But MSNBC puts that up there, which is offensive content. CNN, all of these different places, they talk about that. They'll let Fox News get up there and put Kung Flu and keep saying stuff like that all the time, over and over and over. But they don't do anything to these people. And they literally reach out to millions of people. Now, I reach out to, as a total, let's see, what was it? I would say, since I've been doing content on just my channel alone, I'm probably roughly around 20,000 views. That's not much, you know. That's still kind of almost like just amateur. So, and I still consider myself definitely an amateur, but I'm this small and they're that concerned in what I'm saying. Why don't you just, in fact, just do a video on all the things which I say wrong? Why isn't it so hard for them to just do a video response and explain why everything that I said that's wrong? I mean, I feel like that would be more effective. That way, if I'm wrong on all of these things, then all I'm doing is going to make a fool of myself eventually, right? And then more than likely, wouldn't that make me just stop doing content on my own instead of you yanking my video down like you're worried about what I'm saying or what I might be questioning? Let's see. What did you say, Leslie? I know I don't want the chat. True. Yeah. they want compliance, and I realized before you were allowed to question things, but now it's getting to the point where you're not allowed to even question anything. And so, I mean, I've been saying for a long time, you know, things. If you can't feel it, just feel it in the air. I mean, I've talked with friends who are from different Christian faiths, or I can just expand it out and say Abrahamic faiths, um, Buddhist, Taoist, all kind of different faiths and religions, and even atheists, Wiccans, and pagans, and the like. I try to stay away from Satanists. I leave them alone. But I've at least had conversations with all of these other people, atheists included. And what everybody says is they can feel that something is going on, something's in the air, whether it's just some kind of a vibe which people are feeling amongst each other, whether it is something which has to do with climate change and all of these changes that we're seeing in the earth, whether it's all of the heightened tension between all of the different countries, whether it is just the fact that a lot of the stuff that's going on in the Middle East has just gotten really, really tension filled, and more bigger players are starting to get involved in there. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. But I've been having these conversations with just various different people and trying to have it in the most open and candid way possible. And just ask people, is it just because I'm 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 a man of faith and a believer that I may be just a little too paranoid right now. I've been just reading the Bible too much on certain things, and so is it me? And so I try to reach out and have some of these conversations with other people who are even atheists, and they're like, yeah, it seems like almost like the world is getting a lot smaller and a lot of craziness is going on. I mean, throw a topic just kind of out the window at the same time. I guess kind of off the wall. Gentrification. Gentrification has gotten to the point now where it's starting to, inch into areas where most people would never even would have thought it would have. And so if it's pushing people out of out of certain areas, and it's going to be harder for them to find places to live, and we have all of these foreclosure things going. I mean, I see a lot of tension just going on even within those things. You have a lot of, like, for instance, that strike that that we'll talk about, the Frito Lay Strike. We have more and more. I feel like pushes for social movements, or just more actual strikes for people to actually start, saying enough is enough and start trying to put their foot down, because it's seeming like, you know, it's like we're in the car with the bad guy and the door is open, and we still could kind of put our foot down and try to, you know, kind of get a little footing and hop out or something. Maybe fall down, scrape ourselves up a little bit, but get running before the car gets moving too fast, where if we jump out, we're going to be hurt and they could still drive back and pick us up. We're starting to get to that point where I feel like the car is about to get going and it's starting to pick up speed. And so it's either try to make this last exit, or else we're going to be stuck on this ride. And we look at the elites with climate change. They're still doing all the same drilling. They're still trying to, extract oil everywhere, all over the world. They're still trying to have military occupations and things going everywhere, which that's honestly one of the largest causes of a lot of greenhouse gases that come from a lot of the different military vessels that we have. So for all of those ships out there and planes out there, it's tanks out there. That's a lot of fuel and a lot of emissions being put into the air. And then you start factoring all these other militaries and even just the munitions themselves, all the smoke and everything that it's putting into the air and different gases. These things are not good. And we're starting to see some of the effects. We've had all these record temperatures, heat waves in various different places. And with some of those things happening, you're going to have the polar ice caps start melting. As you start having more of that melting, you're going to start having sea rise problems. We already have right now some Native American tribes which have been pushed out of their homelands, and I believe it's Mississippi. Um, but the more and more these sea level changes and extreme weather events, and you start having, stronger and stronger storms, whether it's tornadoes or whether it's hurricanes, or even if you start, out here, fingers crossed, praying to God, but no major earthquakes because everybody knows about the giant San Andreas fault line, which is out here, which if you live in California in particular, everybody's kind of wondered when is the big one coming? And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Let's see, what do we have here? It says, I believe that peer-reviewed medical science and vaccines, but we have to question pharmaceutical companies and the government to see if they are being incompetent or profiteering from the pandemic. Well, that's one of the, I'll leave that up on the screen while I answer, kind of hit a couple of points off of that. I normally used to be really, really, I accept a lot of the peer review stuff, but I start realizing that a lot of the peer review stuff is I won't say one or two, but it's um, a handful of dominant voices and a lot of people just picking a side and being lemmings. And so you're getting almost pigeonholed into only a couple of different perspectives on things, and you're not hearing a lot of the information which I feel that comes from non-biased sources. So I'm not completely, but you got to remember, there's a lot of money going around, and palms are getting greased quite heavily right now. So got to always factor that in. A lot of people will say, "Well, I understand Amazon's corrupted. I understand the Washington Post, and I understand MSNBC, and I understand all of these other different people." They say they get it. They can see all of those things. They can see BlackRock. They can see, Berkshire Berkshire Hathaway. They can see all of these different corruptions. They can see Sheldon Adelson giving money to these Republicans. They can see what's his name? I can't remember his name. Sheldon Adelson. They can see him giving money to different people, and all of these different politicians, whether whoever they're giving money to. They can see all of this. They see all the corruptions. They see when, okay, the squad flakes out. One of them will flake out so to make sure that the vote gets through, which they were going to try to oppose. If we can see all of that, why is it so hard to believe that the corporations, which most of them have paid the highest fines on record for not only not like, oh, just a little misinformation. No, fraud. That they were embezzlement. That they were literally, basically looked at as almost drug traffickers. When you watch some of the documentaries on the salesman who worked for what was it? Which one was that one? Pfizer. He literally had like a way he would break apart the doctors and figure out which one that he needed to sell to because he knew which one that was like, okay, what's in it for me? And so they're like, yeah, I'll push your drug out. That's the reason why we ran into the whole opioid epidemic. That was a thing not that long ago, and now everybody has forgotten about that company, which was in all kind of hot water, had to pay billions of dollars because of that. Is the same one who's one of the most trusted ones right now to give us this vaccine. And then some people are like, oh, well, but some of the doses are free. Yeah, but they weren't all free at first. And now at this point, the reason why more of them becoming free is because a lot of people don't want it. That's why. If people don't want it, then they have to start giving it away at a certain point. That's the reason why they're giving away cars and they were doing all this crazy stuff, because they have to have, you know, they have to have, those numbers going up, and those numbers have kind of stopped. And so they're a little bit nervous. Let's see, what else did you have in there? Um, another thing which bothered me about this is, I guess from a personal level, this is something I guess I never understand. You never understand certain experiences, how they're going to impact you later on or give you insight into something later on. Well, one of my cousins, he was always really kind of tight on money. And so what he wanted to do was he would go to the research studies. Oh, you've seen me on Frank's channels. I found one of your channels. I may disagree with you on certain topics and stances, but you give good insight and analysis. For the most part, I subscribe. Sweet, thank you. And I'm always fine with even a little disagreement, because maybe somebody can help me see it from a different perspective. Sometimes I could just have an internal bias to something, and it could be I could just be a little bit more stubborn on that issue, and so I'm willing to be a man about it and say that. But I always want people to, at least feel open to have the discussion with me, that I'm not going to try to attack you or take your head off, unless you're like skeptical mantis or hypothetical mantis. Um, but another thing which I have issues with is the gain of research, the gain of study research which they were doing in Wuhan. The virus is literally named after the lab. Why is it crazy? Why was it crazy that I would think that it could possibly have came out of the lab? Now, the reason why they do a lot of this gain of research testing outside of the country, and they do some in the United States. I know, for instance, there's one in North Carolina, and I believe maybe somewhere in the Northwest. I can't remember, but I know that there may be a handful stateside, but most of the time they are overseas, because in case something leaks, they kind of want it in another country. Kind of a messed up, kind of messed up. But I mean, it's true. And if you wanted to work on something like that and you didn't want to risk your own population, you more than likely would, you know, ask another country to do it there, especially a country which you had leverage over. And that goes back to China and China and the United States. Um, Maybe now China is a lot stronger and more independent than they used to be. They built up their military and economy, and the way they're yanking money from billionaires, they're going to stay pretty wealthy. With that said, they don't have to really be as nervous of the United States and other countries. And so they've been able to push back, whereas the United States always had a lot more wealth. So that that power through the wealth was able, what gave them, a soft pressure that they were always able to apply on China, because they say, well, we could take our factories away. Well, we can do this and we could do that. Well, now China's built up the ability to build up the same kind of factories. They build up their workforce and education. So now that they can actually work and put out the same quality, which used to be only the Made in America brand back when I was growing up. So now that it separates the quality issue and the fact that China is able to really play around and manipulate their currency, um, it leaves them in a very, very, you know, unique position, because it's almost like they have been forming their government in a way to make it so slippery that at the point when there was going to be the, okay, United States, you're not the hegemony anymore. We're the hegemony. When the nation was going to decide to kind of reveal that overall overarching, what is it, couple of 100-year plan, or I mean, I'm over exaggerating, but I know that they plan everything out in like 25-year increments or something like that. When they decide that they're going to get to the fruition of this plan and explain everything out, I mean, I feel like they kind of knew at some point they would have to, it might get tense between them and the US. And so they would need to have the ability to do everything that the Americans did for them. So if we were able to give them business, they needed to find a way to supply additional partners, new partners that they could work with. Whereas maybe that partner might not be as strong as the US and be able to have some of the perks of working with the US. But this other nation might be slightly under China, so China can actually exert pressure the opposite way on these other nations. And also, another thing that China has been doing is they've been trying to build up, I would say, build up, what is it, allies with many other nations. They've been doing a lot of like grants and loans with many nations, especially in Africa, and creeping more into the Middle East. Into might possibly you might see China putting a big footprint into Afghanistan because keep in mind all of these nations are in decent proximity to China. So sometimes when they're building up their military, it's not always worried about fighting us or some kind of I'm not saying that it's not, but um, it could be also things which they feel like are a threat to them domestically. And that's where we also got to tie in, or I feel like you should tie in about the Uyghur Muslims. You know, I feel that China may kind of worry that with some of its neighbors who are also nuclear powers also might have some issues and might decide to start teaming up and getting together and going against China for some of their treatment of fellow Muslims. So I think that that could also be in the back of their heads too. You look at some of the business deals which China has been doing with Russia. Uh, it just looks like China is at that point where they're tired of the United States being, you know, being the hegemony, and that's going to come with tensions and changes. I don't know how I got off talking about China and the United States, but whatever. I guess you guys have learned that I am scatterbrained like that sometimes. Um, let's see. Still haven't talked about the Frito Lay. Yes, I guess we'll talk about the Frito Lay, and I talked about, yeah, I talked about YouTube a little bit. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I don't really need to worry on it. I can't really control or spend too much time worrying about trying to figure out and word everything perfectly because somebody is sitting up there just waiting till I say something that they can deem wrong to snatch my videos down or channels down. It's not the first time. I know it won't be the last. Um, just like this is not my. Um, I don't have I had. I haven't had any strikes on this one in a while. But in all honesty, most of them are copyright strikes, which I've gotten. So that happens in starting out, anew. You don't really know a lot about who might get ticked off with, you using their content or not. And some people are pretty touchy, even if you use only a couple of seconds. So lessons learned on that. But the Frito Lay strike, it has been going on for roughly about 3 weeks. And it kind of came to its boiling point. What was it, yesterday? Yeah. And the strike concluded with the workers getting, what is it, one weekend, what was it, one day off on the weekend per month or something crazy like that. I mean, I couldn't even really report on it seriously because it's so ridiculous how bad their conditions are that the little bit that they got, they considered it a win. I mean, these people, in my opinion, are living like indentured. Are working like indentured servants. They literally call one of the shifts the suicide shift, and the reason why they call it the suicide shift is because plenty of people kill themselves, literally, from, the stress that job puts on them, the lack of sleep. I mean, imagine there's some people which go literally months and months without a day off. I mean, I've been on long stretches where I've worked a lot and kind of worked maybe what, a good 3 weeks in a row. But could you imagine if it was normal for you to work like 4 months in a row without ever getting a day off? And talk about hot conditions, in the summer, because whether you guys know it or not, Kansas does get hot, and it gets really hot too. I mean, depending on if it's going to be a dry heat or humidity, but it gets hot either way. Um, some of the most humid days I remember with being like, high 90s, like 98, 99, with like 98, 99% humidity. And then I've seen days where it's roughly at about, say, 50, 60% humidity, and it gets up to 113, 114, 116. So to work in a place like that, and it says that there's always problems with their AC and they're having to use fans, not a lot of breaks that they're allowed. And they said that it is destroyed marriages, it's destroyed families. Um, and these people were able to strike for these 3 weeks. And the crazy thing about it, they were saying that outside in the sun, where I think they said some of the temperatures were like 102, where they were protesting at, in Topeka, Kansas. They said that it actually felt cooler than the actual place where they actually was working at. So the fact that it's that hot in there, and then not even thinking about the people who are actually back there doing the baking and cooking. They make a lot of our so-called favorite chips. Think about somebody sitting there in that 100+ heat with giant ovens in front of you, baking was it potato chips? Can you imagine how miserable? I mean, I, I would imagine that they probably literally see a Dorito and just like start just punching it at some point. I mean, I'm talking about like walking down the store on the day off. I mean, I can't imagine how, employers could be so just callous about what their people are going through. And I know what's going to happen with these kind of things. They'll say, okay, we had a strike. Let's start working on some kind of way of automation or some other way we can go where we don't have to deal with as many people, or we can automate this or figure out something else. Because make no mistake, the moment that you stand up, you better start picking your backup plan or your exit door, because these people don't forget, and they don't forgive, and they don't say, you know what, they were right. I could pay them more. Like, that is never going to happen. Their goal is the day that they can get somebody who's been educated through their schools, comes right out and says, you know what, it doesn't matter. Whatever you feel like is fair to me, I will accept whatever you decide to give me. That's the employee which they're waiting for. That's their perfect employee. That one who, even when they need to go out, even if they have something that they have to do for one of the bigger bosses, what they're going to do is they're going to call you into their office, tell you it needs to be done last minute, and let you work the whole weekend to do their work for them. That's what you're dealing with. So yeah, I think I've rambled on enough on my thoughts on that. These people just, I don't know how you have no conscience on how you treat people. And I mean, I seriously do wonder sometimes, do they like ever really sit back and reflect on it? But I mean, we know the answer. I mean, and a lot of people will try to say, well, I mean, if you were rich and you were wealthy, man, you would have did the same thing. And I'm like, no, I wouldn't. I know I wouldn't do that because I actually care about people. And what you're trying to say is, you know what? The human nature is to not care about people. I don't believe that. I believe the people who are in charge, their nature is to not care about anybody. And that's wherein lies the problem. What did independent dude say? It says, imagine if the world centralized mega corporations were broken up and replaced with small and medium-sized regional and local manufacturing businesses. The world would be less reliable on big sweatshops. I mean, when I used to hear people say, "Well, I mean, if you raise the taxes, then the big businesses will leave," and I was like, "Fucking go, go, sácala para afuera, get the fuck out of here, go. We do not need you because if they leave, it leaves a vacuum for creative people to say, you know what, I can supply that need. I can do this. Now I don't have to deal with all the production costs and things start dropping and becoming easier for us to become entrepreneurs and to actually help each other. And then you have more people, deciding to do what they actually really want to do. If you decided that your thing was, I'm going to make, I'm going to make t-shirts and I'll throw little funny slogans on them. I mean, if that's your thing, you have that ability now to step into that void and take care of it. If it's a hardware store and you've always been this top handyman and you got a different idea on how you want to run your hardware store, now you have that opportunity for that. If you want to have a grocery store, which maybe not might not be that typical one that we all go to where it has just like a conglomerate of everything, you might want to have more specialty grocery stores. So let's say you're Jamaican and you wanted to have a Jamaican grocery store. You can start literally having the community where you have a Jamaican grocery store, Korean grocery store, whatever, Irish, so that you actually are able to have more of the flavor of the world because you're able to diversify. If everything stays in all these large market and large conglomerates, what they'll do is we take a little bit of your culture, a little bit of yours. Well, since we don't have enough room for all, we'll just say we'll take the Caribbean jerk, and that's going to do all the Caribbeans, and then tacos. That's just going to represent all the Latino people. It doesn't matter even if tacos is not indigenous to your place. That's just going to represent you now. And then the British people will do fish and chips, and that's what happens in those large conglomerates. They just pick a couple of different popular things or pick a couple of things to make them popular, and then that becomes the stereotypes that are put on us also, in a weird way. But if you didn't have these large conglomerates, we could actually supply the need which people are actually looking for, and you can actually get, what you're seriously looking for at more affordable prices, and you're literally helping somebody live out their dream. So it's not going to happen, but it is a nice dream to reflect on every now and then, because we know that we are living in a system, or at least I hope that we know we're living in a system where these elites, we are nothing but numbers and widgets to them. And if you think that we are more than that, you're already losing the battle. You got to always keep that in mind. And also stop thinking like when some people talk about conspiracies or this is conspiracy, that's a conspiracy. We have to get out of the mind frame of thinking as if we were at the top of that conspiracy theory and how we would run it. I heard somebody earlier saying, "Well, I don't see how they can make money off of X." It's because it's not for you to understand how that system works. And when you get up to those top levels, there's a lot of money levels that you're not going to see. Also, it's not always about money either. Some people assume that because they don't have money, they think that the elites they're just getting more money to get more money. They're not getting more money to get more money. They're getting more money to have more leverage. The more money you have, the more when you walk into a room, everybody listens to you. That's on a small scale and on a large scale. You notice jackass Jeff Bezos goes up into space and everybody's, you know, Macaulay Culkin, jaws dropped and everything for him. This guy is nothing but another rich guy who just so happened to have a good idea and was able to hit it at the right time. And the rest has been on autopilot for him. When you hear these guys talk, you see that they're so disconnected from the world that they're virtually useless. So a good portion of what's going on is because they had enough money at that point to hire all the best people to keep it running for them. That's what a lot of these very, very rich people do. I mean, I'll leave it at that. I don't want to get myself in too much trouble. But this has been what I've been thinking with Marcus Cage. I'm not certain. I might not go live tomorrow on 50/50. I've gotten a little behind with some of my little mini documentary work for Hebrew apologetics. So I need to purge those out so that way I can get rid of all the stuff I have saved up. A lot of the stuff when I'm doing my research, I do it on my phone. So I have so much crap saved on there that I need to get out of there. And then I could, start, you know, doing some of the other work that I have stored up. It's a long laundry list of pre-recorded videos. I'm telling you, I probably have 10 videos in mind that I'm working on. But they're coming. And hopefully you all enjoy them. You all have a good evening. I know on the East Coast it's kind of late, so if you're getting ready to tuck in for the night, I hope you all have some sweet dreams. Have a good day tomorrow, of course. And if I am on tomorrow, I will try to put. I'll probably try to do the link earlier so that you guys have a little bit more of a heads up. I've just been really busy since I've been getting back to work. After my little vacation with my mom in town. So trying to get everything kind of sorted back, and I'll start putting the notifications up earlier when I'm going to do it. So that's it. You guys have a good one. I'll let you later, Chris. I need to talk to you about one more thing, so I'll probably shoot you a call tomorrow. All right, talk to you later, brother.